The story begins in a small town in Indonesia, inside a private clinic. It was nighttime when a nurse was taking a pregnant woman to the labor room. But as soon as she opened the door to the operation theater, she was shocked. Right in front of her, a corpse was hanging in the air. After this mysterious incident, the clinic was permanently shut down. However, 5 years later, it was reopened. Now the story introduces our main character, Pica, and her friend Arum, who arrived at this clinic for their medical internship. When they first arrived, renovation work was still going on. The atmosphere felt eerie and unsettling. Pica told Arum, "I feel something strange here. We should do our internship somewhere else." But the problem was that if they left, they wouldn't receive their internship certificate, which could impact their education and career. Left with no choice, they decided to stay. After the clinic reopened, Pica and Arum were assigned to the night shift for their first duty. Everything seemed normal until suddenly a woman entered the clinic. Pica checked the register, but there was no record of her. She politely asked, "Do you have a prior appointment?" But the woman sat silently and stared at her. Her eyes had an eerie glow, and her face was completely expressionless. Pica said, "I'll check at the reception." Meanwhile, Arum started feeling a strange fear. When she looked back at the woman again, her eyes had become even more terrifying. The woman gave a slight smile, but her smile was not normal. Arum asked her again, "What is your name?" But the woman kept staring at her without saying anything. Suddenly, saliva started dripping from her mouth. Arum hesitantly wiped her mouth with a tissue. The next moment, the power went out, and the clinic was plunged into darkness. Arum quickly turned on her mobile flashlight, but as she moved it around, she realized the woman had disappeared. A chill ran down her spine. Something was very wrong. She rushed to call Pica, but just as she reached the door, it suddenly shut on its own. She pushed it hard, but it wouldn't budge. The windows had also closed on their own. Just then, the sound of the shattering glass echoed behind her. Arum turned around, and her soul trembled in fear. The ghost of that woman was now standing right in front of her. Arum started trembling in terror, her legs going numb. She quickly tried to turn on the light using the switch on the wall. Luckily, the power came back. Arum sighed in relief, but when she looked again, her heart almost stopped. The ghost was now sitting on her shoulder. Arum let out a blood-curdling scream. Hearing her cry, Dr. Tedo came running. As soon as he opened the door, Arum collapsed unconscious. Tedo looked around the room, but there was no one else there. Late that night, a clinic staff member received an emergency call about a severely injured patient who needed immediate attention. An ambulance was dispatched quickly. However, on the way, the driver, Haru, found the car ahead moving too slowly. He decided to switch lanes to overtake it. Just as he attempted to do so, a shadow suddenly appeared in the middle of the road. Startled, he swerved the vehicle back into his lane immediately. But when he tried to overtake again, he collided with the oncoming vehicle. The crash was so severe that the iron rods inside the vehicle pierced the driver's body. Before dying, he looked in the car's rearview mirror and saw a strange shadow staring at him. The dead body was brought to the clinic, where intern Arum saw it and immediately trembled, collapsing onto the floor. Fear and disbelief were evident in her eyes. Seeing this, her friend Pica quickly asked, "Arum, what happened?" With a trembling voice, Arum replied, "This is the same man who troubled me on my first night here. He tried to misbehave with me. At that time, I was too scared to say anything and only cursed him in my mind. And now, he's dead." She felt as if her curse had caused his death. That same night, another staff member at the clinic was painting a wall when suddenly the entire clinic lost power. A strange fear filled the atmosphere. The staff member quickly turned on his flashlight and looked around. Terrified, he ran outside and dashed toward the jungle. In front of him was a small river, and to cross it, he had to walk over wooden planks. Gathering his courage, he started walking. But halfway through, his foot slipped, and he began to fall. Somehow, he managed to grab onto the wooden planks. Just then, a horrifying face emerged from the water. It was Dr. Tentry, who had hanged himself in the same clinic 5 years ago. And that staff member? He was none other than the person who had murdered the doctor. Now the spirit had returned to take revenge. The terrified staff member tried to escape, but the ghost pulled him into the water. The next morning, his mutilated body was found near the clinic. When Arum heard about it, she was devastated. Crying, she told Pica, "I can't stay here. This place is cursed." But Pica explained to her that if they wanted to complete their studies, this internship was necessary. They just had to endure a few more days there. That night while sleeping, Arum saw a shadow sitting near her. Slowly the shadow moved closer and began touching her face with its long, cold tongue. Arum screamed and opened her eyes, but there was no one there. Trembling, she woke up Pica and told her everything. The next night, Arum's ex-boyfriend, Deem, came to see her, completely drunk. In anger, she threw him out. Disheartened, he rode away on his bike. On the way, he saw a woman with long hair standing alone by the roadside. He stopped near her and asked, "Why are you alone so late at night? Come on, I'll drop you home." The woman did not speak, but gave a faint smile and sat on his bike. As Deem rode, he felt the woman's hands tightening on his shoulders. He tried to look back, but suddenly he lost control, and the bike veered off the road, sending him tumbling down a cliff. He was severely injured and was immediately taken to the hospital. Pica and Arum also arrived at the same hospital because the injured Deem was Arum's ex-boyfriend. As soon as Arum reached there, she saw Deem hugging Pica's mother. She was shocked because she had expected to be the one receiving comfort. Slowly, she began to realize that there was something between her ex-boyfriend and her closest friend, Pica. Overwhelmed with shock and anger, she stormed out. Upon reaching her room, she decided to cut ties with Pica. In frustration, she said, "I have quit my job. I can't stay here any longer." Pica tried to stop Arum and explain that there was nothing to worry about, but Arum didn't listen to her at all. Eventually, Pica accompanied her to the clinic, but now she, too, started feeling that something was strange about the place, so she secretly decided to investigate. The next day, when another clinic employee, Ringo, was not in his office, Pica quietly searched his bag. She found some old newspapers mentioning a mysterious murder that had taken place in this very clinic 5 years ago. Then she discovered a strange album, not filled with pictures, but with locks of women's hair. Beneath each lock, a name was written. When she turned to the last page, she saw Arum's name written there. Pica trembled in fear. She realized that Arum was in danger. Just then, Ringo returned to his office and noticed that someone had tampered with his belongings. Pica quickly hid behind the door, holding her breath. As soon as Ringo left the room, she ran straight to Dr. Tato, who seemed to be the most sensible person in the clinic. Pica told Tato everything, how the suicide of a female doctor 5 years ago held many secrets, and how the real murderer was probably Ringo. Tato said in a serious tone, "We must save Arum, or she could be the next victim." Pica and Tato worked together to send Arum to a safe place, but that night when Pica woke up, she saw that Arum was not in her bed. Panicked, she ran to the clinic and searched everywhere but found no trace of her. Worried, she called Tato. Just then, she heard faint sounds coming from one of the rooms in the clinic, the same room where, 5 years ago, Dr. Tantri had committed suicide. Pica slowly peeked inside and saw that Arum was sitting in a bathtub, talking to herself. Pica nervously called her name. As soon as Arum opened her eyes, their color had completely changed. Suddenly, she grabbed Pica's hand and started pulling her. The moment Arum disappeared, Pica found herself alone in that eerie room. Suddenly, events from 5 years ago came alive before her eyes. She saw how a female doctor named Tantri was murdered in the hospital. In reality, Tato, who worked at the hospital, was the monster behind it. He first drugged the doctor and then took advantage of her helplessness. When Dr. Tantri regained consciousness, she tried to call the police, but Tato brutally killed her. After that, he called 2 of his associates and paid them to make her death look like a suicide. This was why both of them later fell victim to some mysterious force. As soon as Pica snapped out of this revelation, she saw that Arum was still on top of her, trying to drown her in the water. Just then, Tato appeared from behind and knocked Arum unconscious. Now that the whole truth was in front of Pica, her heartbeat quickened. She supported Arum and started taking her out of there. Just then, Arum whispered, "Pica, Tato did the same thing to me." Pica immediately realized that they were both in danger, but Tato was not going to let them escape so easily. As soon as Pica turned around, Tato grabbed Arum and placed a knife against her throat, moving toward Pica with a sinister smile. Pica tried to run, but Tato caught her and started caressing her neck. Suddenly, Pica gathered all her strength and slapped him hard. "Look at this!" Tito went mad with rage and picked up a knife, stabbing Pica's hand. Pica screamed in pain. Tito was about to torture her further when suddenly Ringo arrived. He wrapped a pipe around Tito's neck and tightened his grip. Tito struggled to free himself, but within moments he began to suffocate and collapsed to the ground. Ringo bandaged Pica's hand and told her the whole truth. Dr. Tantry was my fiancée, but before our wedding, I found out that she was already pregnant. The father of her child was none other than Tito. When she suddenly committed suicide, I was certain that it was no ordinary death. But at that time, I couldn't do anything. The hospital owners covered up the entire incident to protect Tito, and now they are trying to renovate this place so that the truth remains buried forever. Pica suggested that they should demolish the room so that Tantry's soul could rest in peace. Just then, Tito suddenly got back up and attacked Ringo, stabbing him multiple times. Ringo collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness. Seizing the opportunity, Pica picked up Arum and ran away, but Tito began chasing them. By now it was clear that Tito was not just a criminal, but also mentally ill. His childhood had been extremely brutal. He had seen his father commit atrocities against his mother. His mother was dragged by her hair, but he could do nothing. Pain, struggle, and hatred had turned him into a beast. As Tito got closer to Arum and Pica, suddenly Tantry's spirit appeared. Her eyes burned with rage. Floating in the air, she moved toward Tito and formed an invisible barrier around him. Tito tried to escape, but Tantry struck his chest multiple times. Arum and Pica stood there, terrified. Just then, the spirit gave a faint smile and slowly vanished. Severely injured, Ringo used all his strength to break the old bathtub in that room so that his fiancée's soul could find peace. Meanwhile, Tito had already received the punishment for his deeds. After this entire incident, the police sealed the hospital and started an investigation. Many old secrets were uncovered, proving that crimes committed in the hospital had been hidden for years. This story wasn't just about ghosts and spirits. It also exposed those terrifying truths that remain buried in people's hearts. The scariest thing isn't a ghost, it's human intentions. Talking about the film, its storyline was mysterious, and the actors delivered an outstanding performance. In the end, it wasn't just a horror story, but also an emotional one. And with that, today's story comes to an end. Subscribe to this channel for more horror stories like this.